What if what we call public opinion was just a manufactured narrative that makes it easier to convince people that if their views are different, then there's something wrong with that, or there's something wrong with them?
Spending is a tax. As soon as the government spends money, eventually it's a tax. Sometimes we put a direct tax on the people, sometimes we borrow the money, and sometimes we print the money.
Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth.
The Patrick Riggins Show. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
Hail to the king. That would be me, the king of talk radio. I don't care what other people are saying. We're back again this week with another edition of the Patrick Riggins Show. The one show on the air that deals in those rare commodities of logic and reason, of freedom and liberty. Not just words to be memorized and repeated over and over in a quest for votes on the campaign trail. No, here those words mean something. Ideas that are fought for on a daily basis, even if we're only on once a week. But together we'll change that. This audience is growing so rapidly that it's only a matter of time until we move to a daily schedule and can start irritating both the conservatives and the liberals much more frequently. You're listening to us on the worldwide Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network and broadcast from our home base in Knoxville, Tennessee on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. All right. This week, or this last week, I did a segment on whether it was time to throw in the towel as far as our country's concerned. Am I sitting here wasting my time, or are we all just spinning our wheels? If you missed that part of the show, or even the whole hour last week, you can go to our archives at youtube.com/Patrick Riggins Show. That's youtube.com/Patrick Riggins Show. There you'll find all the broadcasts of the show, along with the one I'm talking about now. Is it time to throw in the towel? What I hit on was some grumbling I occasionally encounter from people getting fed up with this government and the American people's seemingly non-response to it. Yes, sometimes it may seem that way, but you can't let that keep you from fighting. That's one of the reasons this show is on the air, to keep you filled with encouragement, to keep you going in the midst of a whole lot of negativity. People ask me why this show is so popular, why it's growing so quickly. It's because we're speaking to a lot of Americans. Well, frankly, they just want to be left alone, who want to stop traipsing all around the world, sticking our nose into everyone's business. To kind of back this up, I ran across a survey the other day that demonstrates that we're on the correct course. It was by the Pew Research Center for People in the Press. And one of the startling revelations was that increasing percentages of Americans want the U.S. to, quote, mind its own business internationally, unquote, and pay more attention to problems here at home. Now I can just hear the interventionists screaming, "You're an isolationist. You're a bunch of isolationists." That's the key word they use to try to shut down arguments about the United States minding its own business. It's supposed to conjure up the image of some backwoods hick hermit living in a shack. The excuse is that the United States is supposed to lead the world. And by lead, they mean stick its nose into other countries' business. Continue to spy on every person on the globe. Which, incidentally, if you didn't see it on the news, just to get off the subject here a little bit, the National Reconnaissance Office, they launched this new spy satellite the other day, and it featured the logo of an octopus with its arms encircling the world. And the caption on it was this nifty, "Nothing is beyond our reach." Yes, that's the actual logo and caption on that satellite. And you want to tell me this government isn't just as arrogant as it ever was, especially with all this stuff that's been blowing up with Edward Snowden and the NSA? You want to tell me that Obama is a better president than George Bush? They're cut from the exact same government control cloth. But back to my point, that of Americans being labeled isolationist by the interventionists. So because this survey points out increasing percentages of Americans think our country should, quote, mind its own business internationally and pay more attention to problems here at home, that is labeled isolationism. That accusation might stick were it not for another part of this same survey that found, quote, even as doubts grow about the United States' geopolitical role, most Americans say the benefits from U.S. participation in the global economy outweigh the risks, and support for closer trade and business ties with other nations stands at its highest point in more than a decade. So more and more Americans want our government to butt out of these other countries. But they think, quote, we should have closer trade and business ties with other nations, unquote. This is disastrous for government-centric people. Those people in government who think they're the end-all, be-all solution for the world. The survey went on to say, quote, the public expresses no such reluctance about U.S. involvement in the global economy. Fully 77% say that growing trade and business ties between the United States and other countries are either very good, which was 23% said that, or somewhat good, and that was 54% said that. Just 18% have a negative view. So what can you take from this? Increasing percentages of Americans think that private business is the way to go as far as ties with other nations. That's the only conclusion you can draw from that last statement. It didn't say, quote, Americans want closer government ties. It stated, Americans want closer trade and business ties. Nothing about government, nothing about the military. The survey also asked about foreign policy. 56% of Americans disapprove of President Obama's handling of foreign policy. The public also approves of his handling of Syria, Iran, China, and Afghanistan by wide margins. The survey also stated currently 52% say the United States should mind its own business internationally and let other countries get along the best they can on their own. Just 38% disagreed with that statement. The Pew Research Center goes on to note this is the most lopsided balance in favor of the U.S. minding its own business in the nearly 50-year history of the measure. So, you see, the tide is growing. The support is starting to build underneath all this discontent with our government. People are starting to understand the United States government has gotten out of control, and it needs to be restrained. Furthermore, in that survey, about half of Americans, 51%, say the United States does too much in helping solve world problems, while just 17% says it does too little. And only 28% thought it did the right amount. When those who say the U.S. does too much internationally were asked to describe in their own words why they feel this way, nearly half of them said problems at home, including the economy, should get more attention. While I disagree with the attitude that our government needs to be butting into our economy, it is nice to read that a lot of Americans are simply getting tired of running around the world and playing babysitter or policeman to all these other countries that we really have no business bothering with. We are up on the first break of the show already this week. We have a lot of stuff to get to. We'll talk some about the minimum wage, your rights as a person, some news, and heck, whatever else we can get worked into this hour. Join us after the break here on The Patrick Riggin Show on the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network.